never met someone who deserves the day the way that you do. Joseph, it's time to get ready and the spotlight's shining down upon you. Joseph, so be back, oh, I'm on my way, yeah, here it comes. And I'm delivering a wish to you, so get ready, from every peak and valley they're telling you to get ready, 'cause here it comes. It's on the way. It's a celebration across the nation.
Joseph JAFFE is not famous. Me, Tom Arnold, I am very famous. I absolutely like, because it's very true. Like, I hadn't freaking heard of you until I was sitting on a Friday night. This is how bad my life is. Listen, fucker, good luck. Good luck with your rebranding. Like anybody knew what the name was before. What was the name? Okay, who gives a shit? That's a good name, because it's got your name in it. You can pretend you're humble. You say, I'm not famous. And, which you aren't. So you're just, I mean, anyway, but I hope you get famous doing this. Good luck to you.
When it comes to chicken, I'm your guy.
Blinking.
I'll have what Joseph has.
Look, somebody's talking about you.
This is what we call the voice of God.
Popping.
Everybody just gets to focus on you.
Grab me.
Probably not the best thing for an introvert.
I'm asking for you.
Well, I like a good chicken sandwich.
Touch me. Hi, David. Comment.
Oh my God.
Like.
You're actually an identical twin.
Push.
Maybe I'll just ask Julie to talk about what it is to be an identical twin.
Pick me up.
No, you didn't.
Shouting.
Surprise! Jeremiah, just hang on a second. I just got a text.
There's an edit for your new opening, Joseph.
I feel really honored to have been here, man.
By the way, you've done a masterful job. Seriously.
And it was such a joy.
Thanks, Joseph. It's an honor.
Good on you. This was a pleasure.
I mean, you are the prime example of how to pivot in this new environment.
I wish everybody gets an opportunity to interact with Joseph JAFFE.
Who needs Cameo when I've got my own personal Cameo? Look, I do not know if Ray Higdon is Irish, but for some reason, this is the jig of joy. This is something when I'm happy and I play this little intro. So Ray, whether you're Irish or not, today we're all Irish. I feel very, very excited and motivated when someone comes into the studio that I think has really built a business on top of hope, positivity, and optimism, the ability to will people to change, to become the very best versions of themselves, not just to manifest, but to go out and make things happen. It is Monday, September 19th, 2022. I was watching the royal funeral. It was almost like a royal celebration. Somebody commented, it was interesting thought that all the bells rang like it was a marriage in a sense, and maybe it represents, I don't know, the circle of life, and that is true, right? One door closes, another one opens, and that is all about the continuation, the continuity of the journey as opposed to the destination. So Ray is coming up soon, but a little bit of alpha on my project on Alpha Collective. It is not my labor of love, but my love of labor. I actually, and many of you know this, I teach at NYU, and I was working with my strategic communications and brand strategy students to come up with their own vision and mission statement. And it actually inspired me to change the very vision and mission of Alpha Collective. Truthfully, I didn't even have one written out, but I do now. So the vision became this idea of ushering in what I call community capitalism, the next wave, the evolution of capitalism, the evolution, not the replacement, but the evolution. But the mission is to help onboard the next billion wallets. And so we're doing a whole bunch of things every day in the Collective Cafe. This week, we're experimenting 7:30 to 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We've been doing it 8 to 9, but we've been going in 7:30 to 8:30 just this week to discuss how, if, what, when, why, how much, how do we usher in the next billion wallets in this whole Web3 space. And if you want to join us, it is free, discord.gg/Alpha Collective, 7:30 to 8:30 this entire week. Come and have a virtual cuppa with us. You will not regret it. Another thing that's coming down the pike is a free mint for Alpha Collective, because in case you didn't check, times are pretty tough out there. Things are pretty not awesome out there at the moment. Crypto winter, the bear market, the global recession. How do we continue to produce lemonade from lemons? Well, you first of all got to start with some lemons, and I'm putting those lemons, as you can see, into my alcoholic drink. But there will be a free mint, and if you want to be able to participate and get access, a freemium model type access to Alpha Collective, see, everything's free. If you work hard enough for it, or if you don't work hard enough, or whatever. But here's what you do. Just go to alphacollective.xyz, sign up for email, join our Discord, or follow Alpha GMI. Alpha's going to make it on Twitter, and you will be able to participate. So enough about that. Let's focus on the seated soliloquy today. And the seated soliloquy today is 1 billion% connected to my guest. It's called Get Out of Your Own Way. Now, I want to tell you something that I am convinced, I'm convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the number one reason why ideas, companies, projects fail is not because of the idea. It's not even because of the execution of that idea. Well, partly it is execution, but it's not about the idea, it's about the people. It's about the people. I have said this so many times in my life, in my career. I've not always followed the advice. Sometimes I've been victim to the advice, but I've uttered the fateful words. The only way this fails is if we get in our own way. And yet, it's always people that are responsible for something to fail or to succeed, and even succeed wildly. It's amazing that with all the bells and the whistles and the technology and the creativity, that it comes down to just people, interpersonal dynamics, politics, hopes, dreams, fears, but also paranoia, and and that scarcity mindset, or that victim mindset that we know needs to be replaced with an abundance mindset. We know needs to be replaced with a collaborative mindset as well. One that says together we is greater than me, that together we can do anything if we set our minds to do it. Now, we all know, we've all heard that an investor, a venture capitalist, they invest in people. They don't invest in ideas. The idea gets you in the door, but it's the person and the person's ability to listen, to learn, to incorporate constructive criticism, to respond to feedback, their ability to be somewhat flexible and malleable, agile, but also know when to stay the course, when to stand firm in their distortion, in their reality distortion field, that balance, that art. That's all about people, personalities, our ability, our fallible, our human ability, our flawed ability to figure it out, no matter what it takes. The only way we fail is if we get in our own way. The only way I fail with my manifested goal of turning this show and seeing the show live on CNBC or Cheddar or Netflix or Hulu is if I give up, if I get in my own way, if we get in our own way. So I am fired up and I'm ready to go, and I'm ready for you to, enough about me, as they say. Let's find out from the expert. Good afternoon, Emmanuel, and Bez is here, and he said, good afternoon, Joseph JAFFE. I almost forgot. Thank you for reminding me that everyone that watches that has verified their JAFFE coin in the Discord server, you get a little bit of JAFFE coin as well. So there is your QR code to just share a tiny little bit with you while the show is live. Remember, the QR code is only live when the show is live. Well, let me tell you a little bit about, I mean, do you even need to know? Do you not know enough of him? And if you don't, hear it again. Ray Higdon is the best-selling author of Time, Money, Freedom, and a highly respected expert who works with high achievers to help them master their emotions and reach their full potential in business and in life. Specifically, in the last 5 years, he's helped his clients generate over 300,000 new customers. His podcast, Home Business Profits, has had over 9 million downloads and gets about 160,000 downloads every month. His company, Higdon Group, has been recognized as an Inc. 5,000 company and hosts annual events with as many as 2,000 people live and nearly 7,000 registered online. I told him there'd be one or two little surprises along the way. But when you are someone that lives and thrives in a world of video, you want to make sure that there's always a little bit of video as well to kind of supplement it as well. So you know what? Let's bring him on the show, and then at a good natural break, we'll show you that sizzle reel. Ray, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I am super excited that you are on the show, and as I said, it's the soliloquy is always connected to my guest. But this idea of getting in one's way, I think it might be the secret. I think it might be one of the most critical aspects of how to sort out the winners from I don't want to say the losers, but from people who don't win. We'll get into that as well. But what did you think in the soliloquy in terms of some of the things that I was saying? Do you double down on them? Do you push back? Do you have another take on this idea that it is people at the end of the day? It's all about people. It's always been just about people.
I mean, yeah, there's no question. And you used the victim mindset, and first you just have to be aware, you have to be aware of that level of thinking. Most people are playing the victim, but they're not even aware they're playing the victim because they believe what they believe so much. And they believe that, their hands are tied because of these things outside of me. And so as long as you believe that those things outside of you are greater than you, then you can't change them and you have to remain the same. And so, one of my mentors, and he's one of our speakers at our event, Dr. Joe Dispenza, he says your personality creates your personal reality. And so, how you think, act, and feel is dictating the choices that you see, the behavior you have, the experiences, which will eventually lead to your emotions. And so most people are just simply unaware. They have this way of thinking and feeling and thinking. And, research shows us that 90% of our thoughts are the same as the day before. And so you're in this rut of just thinking and feeling the same thing every single day. And, but you're not aware of it, right? You're in the matrix.
Well, I mean, I've been in the matrix on Clubhouse enough times, but I love, I mean, it's a crazy idea that says we're in this victim mindset, but we don't even know it. And I was thinking, is the corollary this idea of almost being delusional, but like in an entrepreneurial way, which is I am so determined to succeed. I believe in myself so much that I'm almost detached. It's almost like if you follow these Jungian archetypes and personalities, that if you over-index in something, whether it's confidence, whether it's self-belief, it can actually be an Achilles heel. So I wonder how you kind of, is there an opposite, equal, and maybe unhealthy version of the victim mindset? And then in a second question, these are like 58-part question, is let's just say someone is in a victim mindset and they don't know it. What are some of the signs where you can almost take stock and say, wait a second, something's not right here?
Real simple. Just look at your life. Look at your results. What do you have in your life? And so, what areas of your life are not where you want them to be. And so, that's showing you that you have, that you believe you have no way of changing them, or you think that that's just the way life is. And so allowing, 100% reliance on your senses to define your reality is just not the smartest way. Most people think, well, if something would change out there, then I'd feel better. And that's just not the way that it should work. That's not the way that it does work. And so you have to see things as you wish they were before they are. And that is, I would say, the number one skill to develop, is to see and feel things the way you wish they were before they are. And, so there's many examples of this, in history. One of my favorite is Viktor Frankl from Man's Search for Meaning. He was in a Nazi concentration camp, and he says, they had my body, but they didn't have my mind. He didn't allow his mind to be degraded to just accepting what is. He kept that way of thinking of, hey, I'm gonna get out of here, man. I'm gonna survive this thing. And he does, and he goes on to do, I think, 1,900 public speeches afterwards, and gets all kinds of honorary doctorates, and really impacts the world through the way that he showed up and the way he chose to show up in a bad environment. And so it's really taking count of, what are the things in my life that I don't want, and how can I go about changing them through my thoughts, actions, and feelings.
And also, if I'm just kind of synthesizing what you just said, already there are 2 or 3 of these very clear indicators. One is, are my thoughts the same today as they were yesterday? 2 is, am I relying on external changes, or am I in control? Can I make those changes? Just on a personal note, I bought Man's Search for Meaning. I bought 2 copies, one for myself. I bought it now, and one for my son, who's a sophomore at University of Miami. And we're gonna read it to each other every single night.
Wow.
As a way just to, I want to go through it with him. And I want him to realize through this process the power, the power of being in control, and the power of being able to, as you say, to kind of recognize that external forces can control so much, but if you are in control of your essence, your purpose, anything is achievable. So you've just, reminded me I need to start reading this with him.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah.
Now we will go from sublime to a little bit of ridiculous, but there's always a reason for it, which is, people know who Ray Higdon is. They've read the bio, they've bought the T-shirt, they've eaten the pie, they've attended the events, but do people really know the real Ray Higdon? What goes on behind the scenes? And so we sent our investigators into the field, and we found out some very interesting facts about him. For example, he was on an infomercial at 18 years old. He was not a protege of Ron Popeil. Don't worry about that. But Ray, you were in an infomercial at 18 years old. I guess, did the sales bug kind of bite you at that point? Or, what did it instill in you all the way at 18 that you knew that something interesting was happening?
Well, first, it wasn't my infomercial. I was interviewed on an infomercial because I was selling on eBay. And, of course, now, everyone sells on eBay, but the year was, I don't know, 98 or 99 or something. So kind of early on. And so there was a company that was selling, how to sell on eBay, education, products. And they heard of my story. They were in my area and interviewed me. And it was funny because years later, I was at a job, and a contractor came in, and he said, I think I just saw you on an infomercial last night. And I'm like, yeah, that's possible. And so it was fun.
And you were like, but wait, there's more. No,
that's right. That's right.
So another thing, and I see you've been, you've really lent into this, but you went from terrible to competing at ballroom dancing. in just 1 year. And we were able to dig an amazing screenshot of you in the finals. But, you know, in many respects, when you've had 401 guests on a show that began, in March 2020, in the craziest of circumstances, sometimes it's less about what the person says in their terms of fun facts and more of why they chose this as one of their 3 fun facts. In many respects, this and the next thing, they have certain things in common: fear, overcoming awkwardness, this ability to just put yourself out there. Why was this so significant in your life, to actually go from awful to awesome, and of all the things, ballroom dancing?
Because it demonstrates exactly what I teach, but just in a non, kind of traditional way. I'm usually dealing with entrepreneurs or business owners, and we're talking about hitting money goals or hitting whatever growth goals and things like that. But you can use what I teach in anything, and so this was a great example. So my wife and I, our anniversary was last year. It was 10 years last year, 11 years this year. And so I wanted to do something special. I wanted, I bought her ballroom dance lessons, 4 lessons, nothing big. And so we go in there, and I just looking to spend some time, different date night, that kind of thing. And so she really liked it. And she, unlike me, was very good at it. And so she wanted to continue doing it. I was absolutely terrible. And I'm like, okay, all right, so we're going to do this. So 4 months in, doing 2 classes a week, I was still terrible. I mean, just terrible. They're like, Ray, do you hear the rhythm? It goes down, and do your hips move? Were you in an accident? Like, it was, It was brutal. And I know this is true. 4 months in, there was a guy that came in early, new student. He was lacing up his shoes. He saw us dancing. And afterwards, when we finish, he rushes over and says to both of us, me and my wife, man, he looks at me and says, man, I'm so glad I came in early. I feel so much better. Nice. Right? That's how bad I was. I mean, I was terrible. And so that
thanks
night,
very much.
Yeah, thanks, buddy. Right in front of my wife. And so I go home that night and I realize, man, I know all this stuff about mindset and manifestation, and I'm not using an ounce of it. And so that night, I started doing some mental rehearsal. I started doing some visualization of seeing myself as a better dancer, feeling what it would feel like, asking myself, how would I know it's true? What would that look like? And so I started on a nightly basis, just taking 2 minutes, a minute, I don't know, and just kind of seeing myself as a good dancer. What would that look like? How would I feel? What would people say to me? And 6 months later, my wife and I, we came in first place in 2 different dances at an international competition in Miami. And the instructor said, you know what, Ray, you really weren't getting any better. But then one day you just like skyrocketed. You just started doing so much better, so much faster. It was really amazing. That must have been when you started practicing at home. And I was like, well, not really, because I actually didn't increase my practices. I didn't go to 3 a week. I stayed at 2 the entire time. And all I did was I did really a 4-step, sequence. And one of the biggest ones is I just stopped noticing my missteps, which is the hardest part for people to do, is to stop noticing all the things they don't like, all the things they don't want, all the things that are incongruent with their goal.
I mean, it's such a powerful idea. I mean, so when I looked at this, the ballroom dancing, I looked at fear, and I looked at, and I thought of putting yourself out there. But there are a couple of new insights that come out of this. Number one, of course, is what holds us back is that we're focused on the 1 or 2 things, the imperfections, to get to that point of perfection. I say that very deliberately because that's in the book, this concept, as opposed to being able to like really push on our strengths, and kind of move forward and not get tripped up or trapped by the things that are holding us back. Leave them behind, leave them on the sides. That to me is one thing. The other thing is, you could have just gone from awful to satisfactory. But you decided to leave satisfactory behind and just leapfrog over satisfactory to awesome. And I wonder how many people live their lives just to be good enough, as opposed to never opening up the concept that they could be truly, truly great and maybe even the best in class.
Well, very well said and good observation. Yeah, it was absolutely a fear thing. I remember we attended our first competition, and I remember seeing the people on the dance floor, and I just thought, without thinking, right, without, it was just an automatic reaction, that would scare the hell out of me to do that. And that's when I knew I had to do it. And so, like our next book, it's not out yet, but it's called Be Defiant. And so that level of defiance of what is something I don't want to do, but I know it would grow me. And that way of thinking has helped me grow in a lot of areas.
Be defiant. I mean, be defiant. It's a soliloquy in the making when you come back. But I think it's also like being able to defy the odds, right? Defy the naysayers. Almost. Totally. And there's a stubbornness about it as well, but it's a healthy stubbornness. One that says, when people say you can't, you say, well, why can't I?
Yeah.
I love the concept.
And you do have to. Some people do that irrationally, right? So if you say, I bet you can't weave baskets, they just want to prove you wrong just to prove you wrong. So you still have to make sure that you want to do the thing, right? Because sometimes people will challenge me on something and I just don't want to do it. So I just don't do it. But, is this something I actually want? Would this be beneficial to my life? Would I enjoy this? Do I want this? And that challenge does add, fuel to the fire. But you have to be careful, because many times in my life, I've been challenged to do something, went and pursued and did it, and then realized I didn't even want to do it. Why did I do it? And it was only because of the challenge.
That's great. I mean, so, and there's so much in there, right? There's rational defiance, there's irrational defiance, there's exuberant, defiance. There's maybe euphoric defiance as well. But it's important to still say, because, and it's another thing that you talk about a lot. It's ego, right? It's ego that can get in our way. Sometimes it can propel us forward, but ultimately it can lead us down the wrong path for the wrong reasons, right?
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So there's one more aspect, which is another thing that you did. And this one, thankfully, I didn't even have to go and use very bad Photoshop, because this one just exists.
That's a real one.
that is about as real as they get. Now, I also I'm not great with heights either, and I'm desperate to go skydiving. There's something about I think just jumping out and saying, if this is it, then I'm gonna go out the right way. But again, it's fear. It's conquering a fear.
Yeah, it was funny too, because when this was in Aruba, and when me and my buddy, when we got there, my buddy, I think he was trying to get out of it. I think he was trying to and he asked the guy, he goes, hey, no one ever dies doing this, right? And the guy said, well, last month someone did. And he's like, really? And he's like, well, yeah, but if you think about cars and how many people die with cars, not the greatest argument.
Yeah.
And so I remember, being at the door, and I'm just terrified, so terrified. And just that whole let go, right? And you let go, and the free fall was just amazing. And that was one of the first times in my life. This was probably, I don't know when this was, 5 years ago, maybe, I don't know. But that was one of the first times in my life that I actually, and this, may sound weird, but I'm just sharing, that I actually felt proud of myself. And that's what you'll find with defiance, is when you do something you don't think you can do, or you're totally scared of and afraid of, when you do it, two things happen. One, it does generate pride. Like, hey, I did that, man. Like, wow. And number two, you naturally ask the question, what else can I do? And so like after the ballroom dancing, that had my mind, spinning. I'm like, man, this is crazy. Like, what else can I do? And so I did a couple other, weird things, but it's just powerful to push. Most people, they just don't encounter, getting past that level of initial, I don't want to do this thing, I'm afraid.
Again, in 401 interviews, I've learned about generosity and I've learned about gratitude. One of the things that blew me away is that gratitude is the only emotion that is 100% positive. Like there is no negativity whatsoever in gratitude. That and apparently complete mindfulness, or being completely, and so pride is interesting, right? It's, I guess, one of the deadly sins, when it becomes, again, overpowering, when it becomes consuming. But being proud of yourself, that's a completely different aspect as well. And I just wonder how many people on any given day are proud of themselves. It's one thing to be proud of your kid or proud of or parent, like it seems like something reserved for parents. But from a self-love and self-care standpoint, I just wonder how many people are ever proud of themselves, going like, well done, buddy. You did good today.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of thought around this of, for most of my life, I couldn't accept a compliment. So someone would come and say, oh my God, you're such a great speaker. I'm like, oh, thank you. I would say it because I had taught myself that it was rejecting to them if I didn't accept it. Like if I just said, oh, I could be better, which is how I typically, felt is, oh, I could be better at that thing you just complimented me on. But I had kind of trained myself to, that makes them feel lesser if I don't accept it. So I'll just accept it, but not really, not inside. And so I think a lot of people, I don't want to say most, but I think a lot of people are like that, where they struggle with either self-worth or self-doubt, or let me just the accepting. And there were a million things in my life that I could have been proud of up to that moment than skydiving. But I didn't allow that to happen. It was either focus on the next goal and I got more stuff to do, versus take that, second to just say, man, I'm proud of myself. I did something that really scared the hell out of me.
It's again, another interesting insight. And I tell you, we were discussing this in the green room. That's why the show is called Not Famous. Joseph JAFFE is not famous. So you're like, no, you're famous. I'm like, I'm not famous. Stop. Don't say that. But accepting a compliment was also something I struggled my whole life, and I still struggle with it. That and constructive criticism. It's interesting how both sides I struggled with, and I'm trying to get better. But I wonder, Ray, like, what is the right way, or how should one accept a compliment? I mean, is it as simple as just saying thank you and moving on, or is there a way to accept a compliment that can not only pay respect to the person giving the compliment, but also deliver that self-worth and land well internally?
Yeah. So the very first thing is don't reject it. And, and I learned that. I'm very, very grateful. What a great lesson when I was probably like 20 or something like that. Maybe a little bit older, actually, now that I think about it, probably 25. And so I just got done speaking at an event, and this lady came, and I was pretty new and had major fears around public speaking. And, and I'd been working my way through that. And this lady came up to me and said, oh my God, you're such a good speaker. And, I just said, how I felt. And I said, I'm working on it. I've gotten better, but I got a lot of work to do. And there happened to be a guy there, and he said, why'd you do that? And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, why'd you do that? You just she gave you a nice compliment. You shot it down. Now she feels stupid that she took the time to come up to you and give you that compliment. And I'm like, I'm just being humble, man. And that was such good insight. And I never did that again the rest of my life. And so number one, don't reject it. So when someone gives you a compliment, know that, they're stepping out of their comfort zone because they feel a certain way, and all of us are self-conscious. So if they give the compliment and you're like, oh, nah, then they're like, oh, I'm an idiot. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I gave that compliment. And they literally feel like an idiot. Not that they're mad usually, but they'll feel like, oh, that's so dumb of me to say that. Well, I shouldn't do that again. Right. So now they stop complimenting. And so that'd be step one, don't reject it. Step two, thank them. And you can ask for clarification. Like, I'm curious, what made you say that? I really appreciate that's so kind of you, but what made you say that? I appreciate you taking the time to say it, but I'm curious, what did you find that made you want to say that to me? And let them talk more.
It's so good. It's so good because instead of I made a couple of mistakes and whatever. But the other thing we do is we always ask for feedback when we get rejected. So one thing I was taught, which is, when you pitch a piece of consulting, you don't get it, go back to the client and say, if I may ask, what was it about or a job interview? But we never focus on the positive. It's the same thing with customer complaints. We always focus on the complaint, but we just push aside the compliment as opposed to going, well, what is it that you really like? Because guess what? We can now build on that and turn it into a complete competitive advantage and strength. So,
totally.
Well, as I said, we haven't even got to the part of getting in one's way, but I think hopefully people are seeing this as us getting out of our way and just hanging out. And by the way, thank you for telling me that I'm famous, because I need to manifest that more, right? So there you go. So let's talk about the book, right? And I'm excited that there's a new book coming out, and I get so excited when we're talking about books that I just go crazy. You get wallpaper, you get to sponsor the actual show, so let's put a little emblem up there, a little logo in the top, but now we're just like plastered, as opposed to a different type of plastered. But the book is called Time, Money, Freedom: 10 Simple Rules to Redefine What's Possible and Radically Reshape Your Life. And there were a few things that I was looking at these 10 simple rules. There were 3. Since we've gone crazy, it's like overloading of the senses. But there were 3 that I wanted you to talk to. The first is this idea of wave goodbye to your inner perfectionist, and I think we kind of discussed a little bit earlier. 2 is have a commitment strategy, not an exit strategy, and then the third was always remember that money can't buy happiness. So let's start off with this idea of wave goodbye to your inner perfectionist. What do you mean by that?
So some insight that I've developed even since this book, and it only came out a couple of years ago, is that we have a lot of what I would call camouflages, and these are symptoms of a problem that we can be distracted by, and perfectionism is one of them, I've learned. So we have these paradigms that run our life. And these paradigms were almost always created by observations and meanings that we created as kids. So for example, I've coached hundreds and hundreds of people that struggle with consistency, right? So they have a business idea, they're fired up about it, but they just can't be consistent. And so they will say things like, oh, I just want to get it perfect. I don't, they'll use words like overwhelmed, don't want to disappoint anyone, perfectionism, procrastination. Sometimes they call it that. But all of those things are really camouflages, because if you have an idea that you want to, that is meaningful to you, and you're not consistent at showing up, it's not that you're lazy. It's not that you're a perfectionist. That's all camouflage. It's that you just have drawn the wrong conclusion to success. And you drew that conclusion based on observations you made as a kid. And so I've coached hundreds of people that had parents that made a bunch of money, then lost it. And as a kid, they observed this falling from grace, this, being the envy of the town to being the ridicule of town. And they created this paradigm that, hey, if you make a bunch of money, you're just going to lose it. And that hurts worse than ever having not made it. And so the person afraid of falling off a mountain just won't ever climb it. And so they'll get to a certain point, they'll get to an upper limit, and they're just like, oh, they'll actually start stressing out more. And I saw that actually with my wife, in that she observed, as a kid, her mom, who was doing very well, had a great career, lost it all. And so what I noticed with my wife is when we met, I was broke. I'd lost everything in the real estate crash. And as we started making more money, you would think things got better. She got more stressed out. And so the more money we made, like, she's literally more stressed out, because to her it was a ticking time bomb that, hey, at some point the ball's going to drop, the shoe's going to drop. And so there are sabotages, there are paradigms like that can mess you up. And perfectionism that's just a camouflage to prevent you from doing the work that could potentially lead you subconsciously to someone you're afraid of being, or an area that you might get harmed from. I've seen it where if someone had I see this a lot with people who have immigrant parents. They came from another country, worked really, really, really hard, and had menial jobs, didn't make much money, and they saw that as a kid. I've seen people a lot, actually, that as their life starts to become easier, they start to sabotage, because they feel like it's a disrespect to their parents. If they start making money easily, it's kind of like, oh man, that's not how they did it. And, this doesn't feel right. Is this legal? Is this right? Is it ethical? And so they'll actually sabotage themselves. But I've seen hundreds of these kind of paradigms that are just, sabotages. And so, perfectionism is never the root of the problem. That is just a camouflage for what is the actual paradigm. And you don't have to find the origin event, although I found it useful in my life. But you do have to look at the pattern. What's the pattern? How am I showing up? What am I rejecting? What am I drawing the wrong conclusions to?
And also the thing, what I couldn't help but think about is going back to the idea of good enough, right? Because perfection is not static. It's not a destination. It can be, your lifelong journey, and your sole purpose for being is to achieve and continue to emulate. And so perfectionism implies that there is an endpoint or a goal or a goalpost. And we all know that, I mean, if the last 2.5 years taught us anything, is that those goalposts continue to move. So I love that. What about the idea of a commitment strategy versus an exit strategy? I know about going into a meeting with a commitment objective, but I think what I take away from it, just on a superficial level, is yes, people say begin with the end in mind, but maybe don't let that end ultimately inhibit what might be possible.
Yeah, well, first, the quote comes from Mark Cuban of his book. I think it's like The Sport of Business or something like that. But I see two things. To me, it's got two meanings. So commitment strategy, not an exit strategy. Some people will start an idea and they'll say, I'll see if it works out. And I can tell you the end of that chapter, and that is it won't. So when you see if something works out and you're not like, that's not your intention, you're just like, I'm just going to see what happens here. It very rarely, if ever, is it actually going to go anywhere magical that you didn't intend, that you didn't like put effort into. Number two is some people, and I have friends that have done this, they have this business idea and they're like, man, I'm going to build this business and I'm going to sell it. And so they're constantly like thinking of how to sell it when they really should think about how to make it awesome. Because if they thought about how to make it awesome, it would sell. And so it's, I see it as two different things. One is like a cop out. I'll see how this goes. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. And then the other one is you're constantly, looking at this thing. This, selling a business is the end result of having a great business. It's not, so being more committed to making something awesome in both cases.
I guess there's a third one, which is there's no exit strategy, as in you're in this to win it. So commit, stay the course. Endurance is a superpower. There's no, you've burnt the boats. Now just move forward.
I agree. And that's me. I love what I do. Like I just don't, I don't see a retirement, like one day I'll be on a hammock on a beach somewhere. Like I can relax. I've done that. I've learned to do that. I couldn't do that the first, 40 years of my life, but I've learned to do that. But that's not what I'm here for. I'm not here to relax. I'm here to make a difference. I'm here to make an impact because it makes me feel good.
So the first 30 seconds on the hammock would be great. And then you'd be like in purgatory. Okay. So the third one about this idea of money buying happiness, this to me is a good challenge, right? Because people that don't have money will say, wait a second. It's easy for you to say you're on the beach on the hammock, right? And you're like, no, I'm not. But another way people might respond to that is money can't buy happiness, but it helps. But for the most part, when you talk, and I've spoken to many coaches and motivational speakers, they'll absolutely push and say money does buy happiness. People that say money doesn't buy happiness are generally the people that don't have it. So I love the concept, and I want to hear your take on why you believe money doesn't in fact buy happiness.
Yeah. So one, that doesn't mean I'm anti-money, right? So I'm not anti-capitalist or anything like that, or anti-wealth. I'm not. But they're two different things. They're two different equations. So I had a client that he was bringing home $20 million a month. Not bad. You could almost live on that, right? But he wasn't happy in his parenting. He wasn't happy in his marriage. And so he wasn't happy. The thing about when you get the opportunity to realize that money doesn't create happiness, it creates a very weird scenario, because the people without money, they think, oh, if only I had money. So you have something to point to. But the people with money, what do they point to? Right? They got it. Right. So they arrived. And they're still not happy with themselves. They're still not proud of themselves or their accomplishments. And so that's why I love the Tony Robbins quote, success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure, because you did the work. You showed up. You push past your fears. You push past your procrastination, perfectionism, overwhelm, disappointment, frustration, all that stuff, right? You push past it, you achieved, and you still didn't get it. And so that's why I think it's important for people to hear that. That doesn't mean I'm saying, hey, screw money. No. It's not an either or scenario. They're just not equal. So for me, I thought, you know what? When I hit $1 million a year, I'm gonna feel good about myself. Well, I hit $1 million a year, nothing really changed. I hit $1 million a month. I had $1 million day. Had my first $3 million day. None of that made me feel any better about myself, because all it did was have me set a new goal. And so they're just incongruent. They're not the same things. You can have a lot of money and be happy, and you cannot have money and be happy. And they're not equal, right? And so there are people that are broke that are happy. There are people that have a lot of money that are happy. Of the choosing, I'd rather have money and be happy, right? I'd rather have both. If I'm going to be unhappy, I'd rather have money and be unhappy, right? But just understanding that being happy now, wherever you are, whether you're making 10,000 a year, 100,000, 100 million, right? Be happy where you are right now. And then, having more money than that is going to be fine. Just a magnifier. you'll be able to give more, donate more, do whatever you want with that money, but they're not one and the same.
Well, you actually said something that I absolutely loved, which is the fact that money, why are we comparing them? Why are we linking them? It's, causality, not correlation. They're two different equations.
Yeah.
And inherent just in that statement is the saying that don't conflate or confuse the two. Focus on them and realize that one is not necessarily an influencer or a variable that affects the other. And if you parallel path them, maybe you can find that beautiful middle ground.
Totally.
Yes, I love that. So here's another quote, which I actually think fits. You gave me a quote. I see your quote, and I raise you this quote. I always find a quote. It's very apropos, right? You've always had the power. You just had to learn it for yourself. This was not actually, funnily enough, Tony Robbins. It was Glinda, the Good Witch of the North from The Wizard. You knew that as well. But it's true, right? It comes down to this idea of, believing in oneself, manifesting it. It brings it all together. And it also comes back to this idea of we sabotage ourselves. The only way we lose this is if we get in our own way, if we get in our mind, if we talk ourselves out of it, if we don't allow ourselves to move beyond the perfectionism and say, well, we're gonna put ourselves out there. We're gonna skydive. We're gonna ballroom dance. We might fail, but shit, we're gonna enjoy the journey.
That's right.
So, I don't know what the Wicked Witch had to say, but they made a musical about her. They didn't make a musical about Glinda, but anyway.
True story. And I'm gonna one quote you as well, and that is, no matter how hard the wind blows, the mountain never bows.
I like
that's
that.
From the Emperor on Mulan.
There you go. And I see you, Muhammad, and I raise you 2 mountains. No, I won't. I won't. Now, we have a little bit of time left, and I want to, make sure that we talk about this incredible event. In fact, I got a few. Let's talk about the event. Actually, this is amazing. I'm coincidentally, maybe not coincidentally, maybe I'm a stalker. I don't know. But I'm going to be in Orlando myself during those same dates. This is incredible. Tell us a little bit about Rank Makers Live, and hell, the actual speakers that are going to be here, just incredible.
Yeah. So, every year we do an event, we call it Rank Makers Live. And Rank Makers is our private membership where I go live, or I do a video every day, sometimes live, sometimes not. And I do a video every day that gives an action step and a training. And so we have, a little bit over 10,000 people in that community. And so every year we have special speakers, and this year is awesome. We have Dr. Joe Dispenza, one of my mentors and someone I really, really respect and learned a lot from. We have Russell Brunson, co-founder of ClickFunnels, Justin Prince, who's just a rock star in his industry, Gloria Mayfield Banks. She was the #1 earner in Avon, and just a rock star. Jenna Zweigel, we have Stormy Wellington, we have just a lot of rock stars. And to me, it's the perfect combination of step-by-step mindset strategies combined with what business and marketing strategies that you can do right now that are working right now. And so we're really excited about it. Last year, we were still virtual. We had 7,000, online for that event. This year, we do have an in-person, a small, in-person. So it'll be about 500 people there in person, and probably close to 10,000 online. We'll see. And so we're excited about it. It's in Orlando in October 27th, 29th.
I might have to blow off the event that I'm actually going to in order to attend. But, we get the old air horn out for, when people come together, and it's so funny. It's like people spend a lot of money on themselves. I don't know that they necessarily invest the money well in themselves, but I want to just end off with a little bit of video. I said that I had a sizzle reel. Normally I start with the sizzle reel, and I thought I would end with the sizzle reel. But before we get there, I don't have a show on Wednesday because I'm actually delivering a keynote myself in New York City.
It's what famous people do.
Well, thank you. Why did you say that, by the way? I'm probing. But it's actually I think it might be the first in-person event that I'm actually doing since 2020, because I've been so happy in my little virtual cocoon over here. But normally on Wednesday, it's Wellness Wednesday, and Whitney Lauritsen is our correspondent. So we're going to hear from Whitney, and then we're going to wind down, but we're going to leave you on an absolute high with Ray's sizzle reel. So Whitney, take it away.
In my previous Wellness Wednesday tip, I shared something that I learned from a therapy session, and this is actually a part 2 to that in some ways. I was working through some stress and anxiety I was feeling, and my therapist suggested that I put aside time to feel stressed about something. I put aside time to try to resolve it through research or reflection. I might even put aside time to feel anxious. And by creating a container of time and a time limit, essentially some time boundaries, I can then shorten the window of time in which I'm experiencing stress and anxiety. Now, it's not a perfect solution, but it's worth experimenting with. What if you put it on your calendar, a time to feel stressed out? What if you put on your calendar a block in which you're going to process things, research things, write down things? We do this for our well-being in a lot of positive ways. Maybe we schedule time to exercise, to meditate, to make food, to spend time with family. But do we ever put time aside to sit in more negative emotions, to just like let it all out and feel bad for a short amount of time? What if we could experiment with that? I think that that's not talked about often enough. And yet many of us carry around so much stress, overwhelm, anxiousness. What if there was a container in our day for that? It could be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15. You might be spending so much time kind of sprinkling those emotions out throughout the day. What if they just had their own window of time? It's worth trying, isn't it?
I love that, because it comes back to the whole concept of perfectionism and just being able to, and not, you won't get in your way if you actually also recognize the obstacles, you recognize the anxiety, you recognize the fear, and then say, and then instead of allowing it to take over, you put it aside and you move forward. And if the obstacle is too big, you go around it. And so I think I think we've come full circle.
Yeah, the concept is expression, not suppression. And suppression never reduces your energy toward the problem. Expression can. And so, but with expression, you also want to set intention. So expression of the problem with intention of what you want is a very powerful combination.
Same concept as it's not good enough just to manifest. You have to actually do something about it. So look, here's the thing. Money doesn't buy happiness, but money will buy you access to Ray's event.
This is true.
And these are just facts here. So Rank Makers Live, and it's happening very, very soon. Bez says, that's part of his branding. I've really enjoyed the session with Ray Higdon. By the way, I've had the same dancing issues with my wife. And when I let go and not worry about my missteps, I'm better. He says, so my walk away, or maybe my waltz away, just go for it. You get better with the reps and being loose. He's now gone crazy. He says, love it, expression, not suppression, with intention. And finally, we'll just complete the Bez takeover of the show. He said, so Joseph Jaffe is not famous, is famous, internet famous? How internet famous? Don't, world famous. I'm just kidding.
Internet famous don't typically do keynotes. So in New York City, so pretty famous, I think.
Exactly. I didn't mention it was in one of the subway stops.
Okay.
42nd Street.
And it was an audience of one.
Exactly, but I do take crypto, so that's okay as well.
Perfect.
If you want to find out more about guest number 401, my best guest yet, without question, there are a bunch of ways that you can do that. I managed to even find your Twitter. You can follow Ray on the Twitter at Ray Higdon. You definitely want to focus on his amazing Instagram. As he was saying earlier, creating fresh video every day, almost every day, maybe every day. And I've been watching it live as well. Definitely one of your fans. Sign up for Rankmakers Live at rankmakerslive.com in Orlando. Subscribe to Ray's amazing channel on YouTube. Of course, buy Time, Money, Freedom. 10 simple rules to redefine what's possible and radically reshape your life. I think that is almost what we have time for, except for the fact I told you that we would play out with your reel. So if you aren't convinced yet, you will be now.
In personal foreclosure, had gone through a divorce, living in my buddy's couch, and $1 million in debt. And the only thing worse about being broke is having made money than be broke. Had over-leveraged our homes, had pulled out equity because we gonna be rich, and it just didn't work out that way. You know, when my buddy Chris called me, I mean, I'm sitting on my couch, and I honestly, I don't know what I'm gonna do with my life.
Everyone should be involved in network marketing, if not for the opportunity, for the education and to be wrapped around unbelievably successful people. I have one of those people today, Ray Higdon. Ray Higdon.
Ray Higdon.
Thank you, Ray.
All I can say is invest in yourself. It will grant you the speed that you want to get to where you want to go.
I get it. If you've been through a lot, I get it. You can either use that as the reason why you don't create success, the reason why you don't play big, or you can say, this is the reason I'm going to succeed. If I'm building a network marketing business, I want people's reaction not to be, oh, wow, I'm so impressed with your amazing knowledge. I want them to say, dang, that's all you do? No offense, but dude, if you can do this, I think I can too. You have big dreams. There are things on your list that mean a lot. We want you to play as big as possible so we make a humongous impact. Your goals mean something, and so do the work and let's go get it. Thank you very much. I appreciate you. Thank you.
And you, Ray Higdon, are Chuck Norris approved.
You are Chuck Norris approved.
Perfect. Mission accomplished.
We will be back tomorrow. And Ray, so glad that you finally came on the show and look forward to the return, your defiant return. How about that?
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. I'll see you all tomorrow. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show. And if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.
A little bit of a bonus here. I hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you tomorrow. Take care, everyone. Bye.